69 in this series of me programming an NES game live on Twitch from scratch, mostly. Our last stream, which was last week, we had Bo from Soul Goose Productions on, had a really good conversation with him about NES Homebrew, what he likes to do with NES Homebrew, why he does it, what he likes about it. If you haven't watched it, I definitely recommend it. I've been having a lot of fun talking to homebrewers and getting their perspective on why people like doing this so much. So it's been a lot of fun. Just a quick announcement. Well, first, an apology that sorry I didn't stream on Monday, but we had a call, an after-hours call that we were doing at work, and it ended up going much longer than I anticipated. So unfortunately, by the time we were done, it was about 11 o'clock here, and just figured it wasn't worth doing the stream. So yeah, and then the rest of the week was busy with other stuff, so I wasn't able to stream Tuesday or Wednesday. So here we are. I'll do my best to get some good stuff done here. Next week I will be traveling for work, but I will stream on Monday, and I'll make sure to remind people in all the usual ways. But I'll be streaming on Monday, and I will again be having a guest on the stream with me, which will be fun, especially since next week will be kind of a short week for me in terms of what I can do outside of my normal work schedule. But yeah, I'll be traveling, so just one stream next week, and I will announce who it is on Monday. But I'm looking forward to it, so it'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, so let's get back into what we were doing here. So what we were doing was we had decided, or I had decided, and you guys got stuck for the ride. I don't know how you want to think about it, but I had decided that I wanted to take our normal tool chain of, let me disable the preview on OBS here, it's distracting me. So I wanted to take the normal stream of content to game. This is content, and this is a game, and wanted to streamline that process of converting it step by step, try to make the tool facilitate that, the asset tool that is, and work more on trying to get assets converted as quickly as possible, then work more on that, then work on building this complex, convoluted UI interface. So that's where we were at. I had gotten the export working partially. I think was there a problem last time? I don't recall. I can't remember if I solved it or not. So let's take a quick look, because I'm pretty sure that I did. That's the problem with such a long period of time between streams. So looks like the enemies are not spawning correctly, even though the rest of the game is playing fine. And I think that was because of some weird issue with the export itself. I think if I remember right, what was happening was it wasn't handling this properly, but I thought I got that working. Let's see. So that export, the other problem with it being such a long period of time between streams. It's like anything else. If you're away from it for too long, your brain lets other more important things take over. Alright, so I just re-exported it and ran it. I feel like the issue was something to do with the drawing or something. Let's see. Let's take a look at these files and make sure that everything looks as expected. So we've got our entities. Got this. We've got the draw. That's okay. If I remember right, it was something to do with the list didn't have everything that it needed to, and so as a result, the export was not exporting everything. So let's see. So current file list, current item count 6. So there's explode. That has a sprite. There's bullet. And that has a sprite. And then there is player. And that has a sprite. And then that's it. So the flybys don't have anything. Now that shouldn't be true. Oh, is that... Okay. Now I remember. It was because when we exported the map, the flybys are part of the map load. And because we're loading the map afterwards, the current file list doesn't have everything it needs. So, let's see. Find all the references to here. Let's turn off the debugger here. So, all right. So we were loading the map objects here, and then I had turned off that. That's okay. And then this was loading map metatiles. If the metatile is actually used by the map object and enemies, then copy the content. Okay. So that's fine. So when we, let's see, if we go back to load map and call that from export map. Let's see here. Yeah, so this should be doing the addition there. Let's see. So map metatile to file system item. So the metatile we've got coming in here, that's the gradient. And it has it, so it adds it to that. Okay. And then the next one is gradient.j. Okay. Map metatiles I. It's one thing that I do like about modern debuggers is that because you're not dealing with just blobs of memory, it knows that it's an array of objects, and it can actually unpack that in the debugger for you in the same way I've got one here. So like C# will show you that it's an array of a certain size, and then you can see each item. But that's okay. All right, so here's the flyby. So the question becomes current file list, current item count -1. Let's see if this gets added. So it did. Because, was it that the sprite didn't exist? Is that what happened? Yeah, so the flyby sprite isn't getting added here. Which is odd. Oh, no, it is. There's the flyby, and there's flyby 2. Let me go back to my drawing code. Draw flyby sprite. It's just the one, and the tile index is 25 hex. Those are right. So all that matches up. Is it the... Well, you know what we can do? I had done this before. Let's do a quick comparison. Now, these are not going to be exactly the same, but we know they should be relatively similar. Okay. It's fine. It's because, well, I guess it's not fine because it doesn't have the it doesn't have the entities in what I was calling the good export at the time. It's interesting that the palette is, well, that might just be because I was messing with it. Sprite palette. I mean, the good news is that the changes that I'm seeing here make sense. I wonder if it's maybe the map1 object file. Let's open that up. Good old Fred. So what we should have is 2 bytes for the Y, 1 byte for the X, and then the type, I believe. Oh no, it's a export, sorry, so it's the ID and then the X and then the Y. So it's 2. That might be the problem because I don't believe that's right. So maybe there's something in the yeah, 2 is a bullet, and then what was the other one that it was using? So this is the X and then the Y, and then B. What is B? B is 11, which is not an entity type. All right, so the export ID apparently is wrong. Let's see. Let's just confirm that what I'm seeing in the memory is matching what's in the file. It's GID 1 byte, 2 bytes. GID 1 byte, 2 bytes. What is this? Oh, that's the count? Oh, damn it. Sorry. Okay, so there's two objects. This is the ID X, Y. ID X, Y. So 2... That's still wrong, though, because it's bullet and explode, which is what we're kind of seeing. We did see an explosion spawn randomly when the enemies came on screen. So this export ID is incorrect. Now, the export ID... I don't remember... Map metatiles... GID -1... Export ID 1. Alright, so I guess that's going on when we load the map. Export ID. No, it's not. It's happening in the export call? It is. Okay, so that's the problem. Export sprite count. Where does that come from? So that is defined here. Is it just a matter of the index being wrong? I should have committed the changes so that we could look back before I started pulling it apart. I don't think I did that. That's you know, one of those things where source control can only help you if you use it. I'll double check. I don't think, well, you know what, I can compare. I think I had the sprite export working the last time I committed it, so we can look at what's changed and see if it gives us a clue about what I messed up. So, okay, so wrong side. So it didn't find that, so that means we're too far. It's too far removed. I must have changed too much. Alright, well, we can figure this out again. So, and then we'll commit it, right? So the export sprite count is then used. So it's not used. It's used here. And it loops through the map metatiles to determine what the export ID is if it's an object. Now the export ID, based on what we're looking at there, when we look at the code, the first byte is the enemy type, and when we call add map object, X position, Y position type. So T1. So T1. Yeah, so we're getting the type. So it's got to be one of these two values. And now that's probably just a matter of iterating through the sprites. I wonder if that's what I broke. Right now we're iterating through the sprites and we're not incrementing that value, so no matter how many sprites we have in this list, it is... Well, but then the question is, why aren't we just assigning it here? Because at this point, we're just looping through and trying to find any sprite. It doesn't really make sense to keep this process So those GIDs match up now. And then this guy has an export ID. This one doesn't have an export ID because it's not an object. So okay, so all right, so that's why it's got to work that way, because we have to loop through these metatiles that get loaded from the map. I think the problem is just that I'm not incrementing this based on every sprite we actually export, and so it's not being offset by the other sprites that aren't part of the map. So if we do that, that should fix the problem that we created. I keep saying we, like you guys messed up my code, but really it's just me. I'm making these... I'm trying to be inclusive, but you guys did not mess up what I did here. It was all me. Okay, so that's the export. That's kdiff. We don't need that anymore. Fred is gone. I don't know if you guys saw. I'm sure you probably did, but I don't know if you guys saw that they released the YouTube app for Switch, which, I mean, granted you can watch YouTube on pretty much everything now, but kind of cool. Inclusivity and culpability. Yeah, exactly. You're here, so you're at fault too. 7 and 6. Are those valid? No. It's better. It's better that it's better than it was, but let's see. So if we're starting at 1, the export ID would be 1 for any of these guys, except we don't care about these sprites because these are not... Oh, wait a minute. Maybe we do care. Because the number of... We do care because if I'm thinking about this right, we do have the sprites in the current file list, like the what is it? Current file list item count. What did I call it? just current item count. So the sprite is in there, so now we're double counting it, which is not good either. So what we actually want to do is that because I then I wonder if it's because of this. If we get rid of, well, we need it. Okay, so we need it to be part of the file system the file system list, because that's what's controlling the export of the content for those sprites. But so weirdly, what we have to do no, that's not going to work either. I was going to say, what I was going to say didn't make sense. I was going to say that we had to somehow modify the export sprite count, but that's dumb. That won't work. I guess the question is, if we're looping through this to all right, maybe there's a better way to do this, because right now basically all I want is to know what order this thing got exported in, because that list, that order in the list, is what's going to control ultimately the entity ID here. Like, I don't care if the entity ID changes as long as it's consistent, right? So if it shuffles around, doesn't matter. I'm not hard coding the entity types by number, so that wouldn't impact the code. But let's see. I mean, the easiest way to do it is you say, okay, if the current sprite matches, well, and then the sort of hilarious part about this is that these things don't have these are just the metatiles for these sprites. It doesn't know anything about the sprites. Maybe what do I need this list for, other than what I was doing where I was matching I was matching it for the export ID. Maybe I've created sort of okay, so I need it here. I was going to say maybe I've created a weird situation where I've created this odd circular dependency. But I do need the map metatile list for exporting for exporting non-object metatiles that are right. So any metatile that's in the map that isn't an object And the term maybe metatile is a misrepresentation, because it's really any tile set that is part of the map, which happens to be mostly metatiles. All right, so here's where we're at. And this is as much for me as it is for you. We have the project, which has the map, and it has some independent sprites. We load, let's see, when we start up, and I'm doing this because I feel like I don't have a clearer picture in my head of what we're actually doing right now. So when we load the project, we just get some information about the project. And then if it's a sprite from the project, yeah. So our workflow here is load the project sprites, and then we call something called export map, right? Now export map loads the map, and then we say, okay, but we know that there are sprites that exist as part of the map, so load map sprites. And these these project sprites go into this thing, and then the map sprites also go into this thing. The map has some metatiles which go into a separate thing, right? These are sprites. These are metatiles, but also it populates this with metatiles. So that's why we're in sort of this mess, is because we have these sprites that are here. I actually think there's an easy way to resolve this, despite the sort of chaotic drawing there. So when we go to export the map, we know we have at least some of the sprites we need. Now, when we load the map, we're going to get all of the rest of the sprites that we need. And what we need to do at that point is, if it's a sprite, we're exporting information about it here. Now, then we had this separate process where we are taking the map objects, which are the enemies and stuff like that, and exporting that out. And map objects are just a position. Yeah, it's just a position and a global ID. And what we had done, we load the map. Let's see. Right, so what we had done was we said, okay, let's look at the metatiles and see if they're actually used by any of the objects, and if they are, then we can mark it as an object that needs to be exported as such. So then once we go back to the export, I guess why am I jumping through all of these hoops? Why am I doing that? I guess the reason would be that by the time we get to the portion where we could assign a sprite ID based on the entity or an export ID for the map objects, we're not dealing with the information about those objects, so there's no clear correlation between the two things. So that's what we need to do, is figure out how to create that. Now the file system item is literally just some basic information about the file itself. And we know it's a sprite based on the extension. That's all we're using. And then we're doing a load into that struct. I'd hate to go through the trouble of... I mean, one thing we could do is we could just loop through the map objects, and every time we find an object that we exported from here that matches, we could assign the export ID. But that seems unnecessary. I mean, we might just do that just for the sake of moving on. Oh, you know what we could do? That could work. What I'm thinking is when we create the item in the list here, we could update the export ID, assuming we have the export ID. So yeah, that would work. So here we do metatile export ID equals export ID, and then let's go back to the caller. All right, so for this, we don't know what the export ID is yet. But we're going to. So then the good news is that we don't have to do that increment here. And then everything there will be fine. This does not need to happen anymore because it will be set when we actually convert over from the metatile to the sprite item in the current file list. So I guess all we would really need to do I think we can even pass it in. I think we can even pass it in from the caller because the project load would have told us how many sprites there are. And that would give us the starting sprite ID. So let's see. Let's call it export ID. And I guess we'll make it a pointer because maybe we need to return that at some point. No, come on. All right. not U8. Unsigned. No, yeah. U int 8. Okay, and then export ID. Okay. Except, you know what? That should be passed as a pointer because it should only do that increment if, not as reference, thank you, if it's actually a sprite and it can handle the increment for us. Okay. Because I don't know, I mean, we could make it return something, and then if it returns true, then we increment it, but might as well just have it handle it. All right, so the call to this now takes an export ID. So now what we can do is we can have uint8 export ID is equal to 1, with the idea being that the first ID is not 0 because that's the no entity. So every time we find a .sprite file, we can say plus export ID. What is this? Is that what I was doing somewhere for some reason? Do I use this anywhere? Was that where I was going and I didn't do it because, well, I was assigning that to the GID. But it's sort of the same thing. I wonder why I'd have to go back and look at the previous streams, but it's kind of odd that that's the approach that I took there. Is it going to have some sort of problem that I've forgotten about? So the export ID is 4. And it's 4 because it's explode, bullet, player. So the next one is flyby. Okay. So export ID. It's 4. Okay, so oops, I stepped into that. I didn't want to. So we're going to load. Oh, I don't even need to do that. All right, so we do this thing, and we have our export ID, and we go into it, and that's still 4. And the file exists for the metatile, and then we go into here, and I guess that was not a sprite. Temp. Yeah, that was just the gradient. It is not a sprite. So let's go into here. Flyby export ID is 4, so that's set. I think that will be good. Let's double check. So we have 2 objects. We have a 5 and 4, and that's flyby 2 and flyby. And I assume the order of that is okay. I mean, that ordering is going to be based on the ordering that's in the map. So if we look at these 2 objects, we've got 2825 and 2828. So this one is going to come first, and 6 is flyby 2, and that would be 5, which means that, yeah, so that all correlates to what's in the map correctly, so I'm satisfied with that. That's good. All right, so let's take the export content and move it here and replace. And go back to Messen, and let's see if they appear. There they are, and I can actually shoot them. Okay, cool. And I crashed. All right, so that's good. You know, we share in the breakage, but we share in the victory too. Good work, guys. So, all right. So now the other thing I wanted to do with this is, said we wanted to. So we have export working. Convert PNG to metatile. So I'm not doing that yet. Let's implement that. And let me just double check the view modes. Remember I had done this thing where, oh, that was for the view sprite and view metatile. Okay. So let's do this here. So if tool action and view mode doesn't equal 0, then it goes into this part here. If the tool action is export, we're here. Else if tool action equals convert PNG to metatile. Let's find the code that does that. And I'm not going to remove that from the other part of the code. Well, I guess if I'm not going to remove it from the other part of the code, then I should make that external. The only reason I wasn't going to remove it is because if you open the view mode and you are looking at, well, at that point you've already created it, so you don't need that. Okay. Take it back. I'm not gonna keep this code around in here. Doesn't need to be. So what we do need to do though is we do need to load the image into current image. And the way we did that way back in the beginning was, if it's an image, we do tiger load image. So let's see, so free image, current image. Why is this? It's weird the way it's not indenting it correctly. So we just make sure we free it, and then we say current image equals. I mean, it should already be null, because we're starting this from scratch, from a command line. So current image is tiger load image, and then we need our image file name. Which we don't have. So let's get that. Target file name, max file folder. Okay, and then we're just going to do string n copy s. No, not n. Yeah, string n copy s to target file name And then we need the size of that. And then the argv2. Maybe we don't need that. I don't remember which one is which. Okay, yes, that's the one I wanted. Yeah, I know. Hold on. So now we can load that there. So that gives us our target file name that we're going to load and convert to a metatile. So let's see. So current image width and height. If that happens, then we just exit out. Let's see. So we get the current tile meta version. Current metatile version, I mean. We're going to copy current palette. Did I take... You know what? I think... Okay, so when we load... That's right, okay. When we loaded the image previously, we had done this stuff to determine what the palette is, and if we've exceeded the number of colors that we can support, right? So what we need to do is take this code we want to export, we want to make this a function. Load image palette, current image, current palette, and then what were we doing here? Oh, we were remapping. Right, we were remapping the current palette. Yes, okay, now I remember. So, what it does is it's renormalizing. We can leave this because I'm gonna. I'll put it in the function we're calling. So this yeah. Normalize the colors from 0 to 3 if the color count hasn't been exceeded. Although I don't know that we need to not do that. I mean, the only problem we'll run into is we'll have colors that are not in the 0 to 3 range. But that's part of the reason why it's flattening out the colors when you have too many. I was kind of wondering about that. I had forgotten that I did this. So, all right, so there's that, and then we can always have this return a Boolean if it exceeded the count. But let's grab this and actually implement load. What is it? Load image palette. Boolean load image palette tiger image. I believe the current palette is just a 4 element uint 8. Yes. So uint 8 pointer palette destination. And that was it. That was all we needed. Color map. So color map is a UN64 that we're using to map what colors or how many colors are actually used. Oops. Palette destination. Isn't it just palette count? Palette size. Alright, so this is palette destination. And then that's image, and that's palette destination. So for every pixel in the image, go through the palette and see if the value in the palette actually, wait a minute. I may have color count J. Oh, right, yeah. So that's right, I forgot. So right. So we're re-indexing the colors. Yes, okay. Sorry. Yeah. That's what I said before. We're renormalizing the colors. We're putting the appropriate colors, which are 0 through 63, into a 4-element array, and then we're renormalizing, or not renormalizing, we're normalizing whatever colors it used, depending on what colors in the palette destination here, to make it 0 through 3 in the actual image when we end up working with it. Okay. Yes, okay. The other thing about when you do these kinds of changes is that sometimes you have to revisit and remember how you do these things, and it's not a bad thing. It can be scary sometimes because you come back and look at your code and go, well, it's actually funnier when you work on a team with other people. But when you're working by yourself, you look at your code and you're like, oh God, this is awful. It's funnier when you're working with other people because you're like, what idiot wrote this? This is the worst code ever. And then it turns out you're the idiot who wrote it and wrote the worst code ever. So I've learned to kind of assume that it might also be me potentially that did something dumb. All right, so we've got our free, we got our load, then we're gonna do load image palette, current image, current palette. So that gives us that. And then we look at the dimensions, and then we copy current palette into the current metatile palette. And then we copy the indexed image, and then we find the path that, or we, let's see, what do? We copy the full path name of this, which is wrong. We now want this to be target file name, and then we take that and we replace the extension with .metatile if it exists. I don't remember why. Oh, okay, I do remember why. We don't need to do this here. So what we were doing here is we were saying, okay, if it already exists, we don't need to re-add it to the list. But because this is only just exporting the thing, we don't care. All right, so let's give this a whirl. Keeping in mind that it's going to break the metatile, but that's okay. It's going to break it because the colors are going to be wrong. I was researching online a little bit, and I admittedly don't understand all of it yet. I was researching if there was any good way to take two colors, compare them, or take a set of colors and compare them and find the one that's the closest match. There are some algorithms that work based on just looking at the I think it's the HSL representation of color, but there are also some algorithms out there that take into account your perception. So we see things differently than they potentially map in terms of closeness and color from purely a sort of mathematical perspective. And so these algorithms will take the colors, compare them, find out which one is the closest, including based on how we see the differences in color as people, and then give you the one that's the closest match, which is what we would want for this, rather than right now where we're exporting the PNG and then have to essentially touch it up afterwards. So let's if I can understand it a little bit better, I'll be able to implement it, or at least some semblance of it. Okay, so NES asset tool, PNG to MT, and then let's try shooter assets PNG gradient.png. Well, that didn't work. PNG to MT. Else if tool action export, else if tool action blah. Could not open project. Where did that come from? Project file name. Oh. Well, sure, yeah, you're not supposed to do this unless there actually is a project file that we're trying to load. So that was your first problem. So let's move this to export here. So did it export the metatile just now? Where's the view details? No. Okay, well, I was curious to see if I could get it to work without doing it in the debugger. Wishful thinking. There's always some little thing that gets messed up. So let's see, PNG to metatile, PNG gradient dot PNG. And that is this code here. So let's run it in the debugger. So the that's fine. Target. Why are you empty? Target file name. argv2. Oh, because I didn't do it for the command we're trying to run. Okay, well that would explain that, so that's good. Okay, so we have that. We have an image. We load the image palette. There's the current palette. 1, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, okay. So then current image width and height are good. So we populate the metatile. Why am I doing this? Who knows? Stop. We can just do a mem copy. I think it might be a holdover from when I didn't have the indexed version of the. Oh, is it maybe because? No, let's say unsigned. Well, yeah. So when we didn't have, oh my God, I'm talking and doing stupid things. Yeah, so I think that might be a holdover from when we had the non-indexed image only, and I convert it over to have an indexed or the indexed color representation, which is not useful for the Tiger library, but is for what we're doing. So let's see. So that's 1024. So that's just a mem copy. That should be that. It's better. So that should just be. Okay. Temp name. Is it because the file's there already? File 3. I'm confused. Why is the date becoming 9/24/2018? What are you doing, Windows? Right. I deleted the file. It's just the PNG there, right? Tell it to use that to create the gradient, and it is putting it back with 9/24. Created Monday, 9/24. That is strange. I'm not sure how that's possible given that I deleted that, but okay, I guess. Weird. Okay, so now I want to view the metatile and make sure that the output is okay. In this situation, because I just converted it, so that gives us our target file name, and now we're going into the view mode, and so this whole thing here with the list can go away, essentially. I mean, I'm not, well, I don't want to totally get rid of, well, I guess I do, because we're not really dealing with the list per se. There. List end. Some of this code is still fine, but okay. So that's our block comment out here. So what we want to do is we want to view the metatile now. So what we need to do, I guess, first is we probably should actually load the metatile file. Oh, what are we doing? Oh, I see. I forgot I decided to do this. Is metatile. If no hyphened argument is provided, then look at what's there to see if it's a sprite or metatile and attempt to load and view it. Okay. So that is for my benefit because I forgot about that. Well, I can just change this to 1. And then for here we say, okay, current metatile, right? Or is it just I thought I had created one in here. Is it just not here yet? Oh yeah, okay. So I did, I remembered that right, it's just it wasn't defined yet. Okay. So current metatile, come on. And then the file name, which is target file name. All right, cool. So now we have a metatile. If action equals view metatile, then what we want to do is the following. We want to let's see. We want to convert or load the image for the metatile. Okay, cool. And this is tool action. So we can do that up there too. I gotta move the image. Oh, also, I don't know if you guys noticed or not, but I was totally blown away by the fact that we have over 500 subscribers to the YouTube channel, which is pretty awesome. I would not have guessed that many people were interested in NES programming. I don't know why. I mean, so many people love the system, so it was just very surprising to me, especially me being, you know, new to the community, and the streams being sort of long. But yeah, it was very pleasantly surprised, and it's exciting that people are getting interested in it and watching my streams, and so I appreciate that. I appreciate that people like what I'm doing and are interested. And I know I've been saying this for a while, but Zero Pages Episode 3 about assembly language programming will be out hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And it will attempt to do a decent job of describing assembly language programming, while maybe skirting over some of the programming aspects of it and diving deep more into why assembly is not as intimidating as it seems. So we may not all be programmers ourselves, but I'm sure many of us are nostalgic for well, yeah. I mean, it's that's part of the reason why I'm doing this, is just to kind of show all the work that gets involved in putting this all together. So if nothing else, it's a record of one man's attempt. Oh, good. I'm glad you like the Zero Pages. Or will find them interesting. I know these streams get long, so I figured, if I can take what I did and kind of crunch them down into 10 minutes or so, it'll be useful. It may be difficult to do in single 10-minute chunks, but yeah. Alright, so we've loaded the current image, and we've got the metatile to, okay, free image. Alright, so we're going to view it, then we have to do a few things. The first thing we have to do is we need to bring back the code that's actually drawing the image. Which is this. That's actually the other thing I hadn't considered, is the collision stuff is not not creatable anywhere else except for in the tool, so that'll have to stick around as well. All right, so that's that. Did I do anything with this? Oh, okay. This is for if it's animated. Yeah, some of this is just so kind of all over the place. Selection. And, like I said, I mean, it's just part of the process of building this and not knowing what I was necessarily doing, and learning how I could just get it to work. Alright, so what else is broken here now? Expected a declaration. Did I miss a curly bracket? I have an extra curly bracket. Alright, so Now if I do this, just out of curiosity, okay, I think my idea to do so this will work, but I've got to do an additional check here. Basically, for these, they need an extra parameter. This one, I wanted to make it sort of shorthand, where you just pass it the metatile. Yeah, that crashed. So it seemed like the right thing to do there for the seemed the right thing to do to just be able to pass the name of the metatile or the sprite and have it open it up to view it. So let's so we have different numbers of arguments. Exception thrown. Load file name. C : projects shooter assets PNG. Let's just, instead of me, gradient.metatile. File name. Target file name. Current metatile. Okay, so I've got a target file name. Oh, yeah, system. Our platform code is not initialized yet at that point, so that's not going to work. Let's do that right after we just check the number of arguments, get that set up, and let's see what happens here. Okay, that's better. It actually opened a window. All right, so we've got our palette drawn here. That's cool. So I want the palette to be shifted over to the left, and I just want the image to be drawn, I don't know, somewhere right there above it. All right, so what is the deal? Okay, so the problem is most likely that neither of those are set. So we should probably move that up. Oh, and image selected should also be, may not need it to work that way, but let's kind of work within the framework of what we've got here. So image selected, well, no, it's metatile selected equals true. Still no nice. Okay. Let's just take a look at this here. Image changed is false, draw grid is false, selection is 0, current image is this guy, image height and width. Okay, so that's the problem. Where Where is that getting set up? If sprite selected, otherwise... Oh. Okay, simple. That's only really relevant... It's really only relevant for the sprite where the size of the image is actually not the size because it's an animation and we're consolidating those frames down. Let's see. There we go. Alright, so what I want to do, I want to get that, actually that's not terrible. I want it over more to the left though. So let's just make that like 20. And then the palette, same thing. Move that over to there. Yeah. Now the only thing that we're missing at this point is the buttons, which we need to be able to save changes and toggle the grid, because we have our palette stuff. Cool. Oh, you know what we don't have, though? We don't have the selected, the actual metatile palette view. So let's do that. Let's bring that sucker in. I'm just gonna change the left part to there. We need swapped index. All right, so palette view, color selector, selected color. What is it using for the palette? Current sprite. Current metatile. That would explain it. Yeah. Alright, so now, cool, I can swap those. If I want to, I can do this. Okay, and that's changing that, and that shouldn't have saved it. Okay. And then, all I need is when we make those changes, we say image changed equals true, which means that we need to put these bad boys up above the image. Or not. What did I miss? Oh, am I? Yeah. So I bet, let's see. Okay. Fair enough. Let's see here. When you draw this, no, image data is that doesn't equal image or refresh, which is what I'm passing in, isn't it? For image changed, that's refresh, yeah. So if the image doesn't equal the image or we're refreshing, then that... Oh, okay. That's the problem. It's not actually updating... It's not actually updating the palette properly. So that was the problem. I did not steal my own code properly. Because there's that whole thing where it's got to actually do the swap and redraw it. There we go. And then if I save and we reopen it, it should have... Well, in theory it should have saved it, but let's see. Yeah, that's not going to work. Target, file name. I don't know. I must not have actually saved it anywhere. Okay, so we change it to a funky color. We save it. We close that. There we go. Cool. And so now I should be able to do this and then open it up and it's back to normal. Awesome. Okay. We can't toggle the grid yet, so let's fix that. Draw grid is equal to not draw grid, image changed. So this has got to go up here too, because it's an immediate mode GUI. It actually matters. Toggle. Yeah, there we go. Oops. Okay, well that's clearly wrong, but it's doing it, it's drawing it, and it's got the alpha blend correctly, so that's good. Alright, so where did I go wrong here with draw grid? Draw grid. Actually, this should only be true if in draw grid. We don't care about the mouse clicks unless we're actually drawing the grid here. So let's see, so draw grid gets called there, so it would be the render call that is actually looking at that. So if we're drawing the grid, then start at the node X. So why would the node's X value be wrong? Oh no, it's not for the grid, it's wrong for the overlay. Okay, so that's a separate thing. Or it must be. I must have hard-coded the position. Let's see. Yeah. Yep, I did. Okay. So that's why. Let's do this. Let's do const unsigned. Let's make it a uint 16 left offset, shall we? Just so we don't have this problem again in case I've got to change the left offset once again. We can be assured that everything will follow suit. And Yeah, we can do a top offset also, just for the sake of completeness. And these are all based off the offset of the edge of the screen, except for this guy, because of the way the anchoring is being done. Top offset. Okay. So that should fix that now. Toggle grid. There we go. Very nice. Now let's open another one that existed already with a grid. Yeah, cool. All right, so that's working as expected. Save. Nice. Okay. I'm going to wrap it for now, just because I got to get up early tomorrow. And we've been going, well, an hour and 40 minutes. And I know I haven't been streaming a lot, like I said in the beginning, but hopefully we'll get back to that once I get back next week. Look out for the information on Twitter, and I'll post a comment in the YouTube page also letting people know who I'm talking to on Monday. I'm pretty excited about it for a few reasons, but yeah, I've been enjoying those interviews, and it seems like people really like them, so it's fun to engage the community in this, so it's not just me always. I'm hoping to wrap all of this up, this game, and like release it by sometime next year. So, but at the same time, at the rate that I've been streaming lately, I don't know how realistic that is. So I'll have to kind of get back into this groove of the 2 days and longer streams. I think once we've got this stuff taken care of with the asset tool, we'll be in better shape for that. I've got some assets from that artist I was talking about earlier in several other streams, and he sent me some stuff that unfortunately I haven't really looked at in detail. What he sent me looks good, but there are potentially some issues related to the number of colors he's trying to use and the overlapping sprites, but that might be okay. The other thing that I want to do, I was experimenting with this a little bit, but it's actually really cool, and we'll do this in the next programming stream. One of the things that I played around with, because I'm working on a little competition project off stream for, if you don't know, NESDev does a competition every year where people can submit games, and then the winner, I forget how much they win. They win some amount of money, but all of the entries end up on a cartridge that's provided by NESDev. And there are different competition rules that you got to follow in terms of, I think you have to use NROM and stuff like that. So it's worth checking out. In fact, we can even, well, I don't know if the latest one is up, but the deadline is the end of January of next year. But what I was doing, which was kind of cool, was I had the project open, not this, I had the project I was working on open, and I had gone into the script window, and I was trying to play around with some of the ideas that I had, basically working on the game logic in Lua. The basic structure of the code was still in assembler, right, the 6502, so not very different from this, where it's processing the entities and drawing them, but the actual game logic for moving the sprite around was in Lua, so that I could really mess around with it and play with it really easily. And it was updating the memory on the NES directly, so it wasn't like I was cheating and drawing my own sprites on top of it. It was actually the sprites in Messen in the NES, just not being driven by 6502 code to determine the new X and Y coordinate. And that works really well. On the chat, the Discord, Kasumi showed off. He has a bunch of code that he's written that he can actually mouse over in his game, and a pointer shows up for where the mouse is, and then he can spawn objects that way, which is really cool. And that was what gave me the idea of trying, because I had the idea to use Lua to drive the code for testing purposes in the first place. But when he showed that, it made it clear to me that that's something that's actually feasible. So, cool idea, something to try out if you're maybe intimidated by the assembly a little bit. You can still drive your sprites using the Lua by just updating your addresses that end up copying to your OAM sprites that you would have, populating in here. So anyway, we'll look at what that looks like in the next stream or in programming, because I think that'll be really useful for us to kind of move the game forward design-wise. I really want to focus more on the actual game part of it versus the tech part of it, because we're getting to a point where I'm sure there are going to be more things we have to do with the asset tool and the pipeline of getting things through the game, but we're getting to the point where we've got to actually figure out how this is a game and it's going to be fun to play, which is probably even harder than what we've done now to make it good. Anyway, I mean, if we just want to make it something where you fly endlessly and shoot enemies that spawn, we're basically done. But I want it to be more than that. So anyway, thanks for watching. Always appreciate people being on the stream and watching the videos on YouTube. As always, you can hit me up on Twitter at Clearvis. I'm on the Discord in Nintendo Age. I do check messages on Nintendo Age occasionally, so if you're more inclined to do that, then that's fine. And then my email address is on this here, zelius@gmail.com. So if you want to reach out to me through email, some of you have direct messaged me through Twitter. That's fine too. Build the engine, then design the car. Well, yeah, you need a solid engine before you can worry about what your car is going to look like, right? So anyway, yeah, thanks again. Have a great night. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you on stream Monday. Have a good one.